Hello again, everyone. Edwin Leonard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about astrology and the 22nd degree. Now, the first thing I want to do, I want to clear up, at least in my opinion, any misperception or misconception that is associated with this degree. I think a lot of people look at this as overly fatalistic. Well, if I have something prominent in my natal chart, say the sun, moon, or ascendant at 22 degrees, this is gonna make me either nefarious, malefic in some way, malevolent, and I don't think the influence is connected with that. The thing about 22 degrees in astrology, I think what it does is it can give some added strength, some emphasis, can accentuate the sign for positive or negative, and a lot of that is dependent and predicated on the aspects that are made, I think, to this position in the chart that's at 22 degrees. Now, and I think what it can do, this can manifest in perhaps a distorted expression of the sign in at least in some cases. Now, as many of you may know, I have Taurus rising at 22 degrees. Now, I have had certainly financial misfortune for a strong percentage of my life, and it could be somewhat attributed to that degree. I also have Venus square my ascendant and square Saturn, so I think that plays a role in that as well. But also on the positive side, I have gained some notoriety and exposure from doing my astrology videos on YouTube, and so I think there's a little bit of good and bad with it. Now, the 22nd degree is also a critical degree for the fixed signs, so it might even be a little more emphasized with fixed signs as opposed to 22 degrees in mutable or cardinal signs. And the thing too is, in my chart, I also have the black moon Lilith at 22 degrees Leo in the fourth house, conjunct my fifth house cusp, and it squares my ascendant and squares my Saturn. So in Leo and the fifth house are associated with children, and lo and behold, I have no children. I also have other elements in my chart that could be indicative of difficulties with children or perhaps no children, including my intercepted fifth house, which has Pluto in it as one example. So anyway, so really, and also let's take, I want to take another example. Now, many of you may have heard of Hall of Fame pro basketball player Dennis Rodman. He's a little bit, I saw him as a little bit iconoclastic, but he was a very prolific rebounder in the NBA. And he has his son at 22 degrees Taurus. So he had a little bit, he gained a lot of notoriety for being a little bit iconoclastic, I think a little eccentric, but he also, I mean, he made obviously a ton of money in the NBA, and Taurus, of course, is the sign associated with money. And he also gained, just in general, gaining that notoriety and exposure. So, and he's an NBA Hall of Famer, if I'm not mistaken. So, those are some things to look at as far when you look at this 22 degrees. As far as this goes, also we have to consider that sometimes it can be expressed in a very strong negative expression of the sign. Now, I stated before that, okay, if you have 22 degrees in a sign, it's not going to automatically make you nefarious or malevolent, malefic, or evil, or this, quote, kill or be killed, end quote, type connection with this. But sometimes it can give a strong negative expression, but you have to have, I think, other things in the chart, negative aspects that may support this. Now, here's the thing. Now, many of you may have heard of a notorious serial killer, Richard Ramirez. I believe he was known as the Night Stalker or something similar to this. And anyway, he was a notorious serial killer. He had his rising sign at 22 degrees Sagittarius. And anyway, perhaps something having maybe a very warped or demented philosophical outlook might have been a contributing factor, but also there's other things to look at. He had his moon in Pisces and Mercury in Pisces, which they both squared his ascendant, and they were also squaring it from the third house. He also had the moon in Pisces at the anaretic or 29th degree of Pisces. And Mercury, of course, as many of you may know, is in its detriment in Pisces. So I think that also were strong contributing factors in what he was doing. He also had Uranus transiting his 12th house at the time of these serial killings, and that could have indicated perhaps an enigmatic or unusual mental illness that may have been set on at that time. So those are some things to consider. And also, let's take another Sagittarius 22-degree person, prolific former MLB not Hall of Famer, MLB player Barry Bonds has his ascendant at 22 degrees Sagittarius. Okay, many of you may know that he has the record for all-time career home runs in Major League Baseball. But at the same time, this number is tainted because he's been involved, as many of you may know, with steroid scandal and controversy. So he has a little bit of both. He's got notoriety for good things, notoriety for bad. And the thing with the Richard Ramirez thing goes, okay, I'm not lauding him or any way, shape, or form, but he did achieve notoriety, but for very negative reasons, of course. And those are some examples, I think, that it can express this 22 degrees of a zodiac sign. And also, let's look at some other people that have 22 degrees in their chart, some prominent people. Now, actor Tim Allen, whose birth time is unknown, likely, in all probability, has his sun at 22 degrees Gemini. And another actress, Pamela Anderson, if I'm not mistaken, has her ascendant at 22 degrees Gemini as well. And there's also another person that has John Mayer, who is a singer-songwriter, may have his sun at 22 degrees Libra. It's listed on Astro.com, but the rating for the chart was very low, like DD or something, and it's not really, I guess they didn't get it from a great source, so it's a little speculative. But it could be at 22 degrees Libra, depending on the time of birth. Now, anyway, those are some things to consider as far as 22 degrees in astrology goes. And I think the main thing is, in summation, and what I stated earlier, is that keep in mind that, okay, 22 degrees, if you have sun, moon, or ascendant at 22 degrees of a sign, this is not a fatalistic thing. This is not like, oh, I'm going to be facing oppression, or I'm going to be nefarious or malevolent or evil, or I'm going to have all kinds of misfortune the rest of my life. It could strengthen the sign for good or negatively, but it generally isn't going to be anything really that drastic that's going to happen to a person that has that 22 degrees in one of those areas in their chart that I talked about, sun, moon, or ascendant. And some people may look at other planets and points in their charts at 22 degrees where they would see that as prominent. I mean, you could look at maybe the other personal planets, perhaps, but I think it's emphasized strongest with the sun, moon, and ascendant, because I believe, at least in my opinion, those are the three strongest proponents in a natal chart. Well, anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for astrology and the 22nd degree. And stay tuned next time, where I will be continuing my series on Pluto transiting the houses. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.